artillery, not counting rocket artillery, which Russia has a lot of, or the small man-portable mortars. In the US military, infantry is often called the queen of battle. Tanks, aircraft, ships are great, but they can't hold territory. You need boots on the ground, infantry. Russia has a different approach. They've always put a lot greater emphasis on artillery, calling it the king of battle, or, as Stalin put it, the god of war. And he wasn't wrong. During World War II, it's estimated artillery accounted for roughly 2/3 of all casualties. Ever since, the Soviet Union, and by extension, now Russia, has put a lot of emphasis on artillery. That and mechanized forces. In Russia, everything is mechanized. They don't even have light infantry. They want everything flexible and able to maneuver, including artillery. First, some basic background and tactics of artillery that a lot of people miss. You can skip forward to this time here if you're not interested. The use of artillery has changed somewhat over time. In the past, artillery was more often used to soften up enemy defensive lines before an offensive. It wasn't very accurate, so they typically had to target larger areas. It's still often used this way, but as accuracy increased, target of opportunity fire missions became more common. Now, for example, a lot of the artillery strikes we've been seeing are aimed at more specific and smaller targets, even individual vehicles like tanks. Counter battery fire has become much more effective as well. Radars can quickly calculate backward to where an enemy shell came from, and then fire back on it before it can withdraw to safety. But it's still no magic bullet. There are so many variables that can affect accuracy, such as the weather, the changing temperature of the barrel after each shot, the age of the barrel, calibration errors, defects in production, and much more. Because of this, artillery is a numbers game, and there's multiple levels of intensity of artillery fires. Harassment scale attacks could expect to inflict 0 to 10% casualties and/or destruction. This is typically used to keep the enemy pinned down, restrict their movement, and disrupt sleep, meals, resupply, and so on. Next is neutralization, anywhere from 10 to 40% destruction. It's used to degrade enemies' ability to operate effectively in the short term until they can reorganize. Then, maximum intensity, destruction of 50%, sometimes more, and that's used to degrade enemy units in the long term. Each level requires increasing number of artillery shells fired. So, with the exception of the latest and much more expensive guided shells, artillery is still often used in large numbers. And if you look at aerial and satellite imagery of Ukraine, you can see areas are just covered in craters. It kinda looks more reminiscent of World War II, where the entire landscape was just littered from countless artillery strikes, than any modern high-tech war the average person might have expected, and 3 for brigade, each battery typically with 6 pieces. That's 1,000